Horror games in the early 2010s were absolute masterpieces. Games like Amnesia, Outlast, and the famous Slender Man all took the gaming world by a storm. Hi, I'm Saichi, and I create weekly commentary content on whatever I find interesting myself. Today, we will dive into scary games.
Why don't we see if they emulate that same fun that they have anymore?
To start the story, it all started with the king of them all, Amnesia. This game flooded and took over every gaming video YouTube had to offer, thus growing the career of the creator PewDiePie. Those who watched peak PewDiePie and remember the famous name Stefano know exactly what type of presence that this game had.
It's good? Yeah, it's good.
Eerie environments to the simple yet well-crafted music selection in the game to the main selling point, the mods. All of these ingredients baked this game into the perfect transition into the next generation of horror games. It started having merch, and even small YouTubers tried hopping on the trend. This was the start of something legendary. But because of Amnesia, it led to the creation and exposure of one of the scariest characters ever created, Slender Man. I remember this game like it was yesterday. The amount of nightmares this game generated was beautiful. Little old me could not go to sleep after playing this game, and that's without reading the creepypastas about it. Boom, boom. It generated an intensity so heavy that it even had me on the edge of my seat hoping I could collect all 8 pages without being seen by him. What's crazy is that the background sounds wasn't the scariest part of the game. No. It was walking into the damn bathroom. The amount of times people have had their soul snatched from them after collecting the page in the bathroom and seeing Slender Man is enough to look like a Kia production line. This game was so simple, but a masterpiece. While we're on the topic of written stories, let's talk about SCP Entertainment Breach. Boy, was that game scary. Not only does it possess a current SCP page where you can read on all the information for the SCPs contained, this game goes as far as to put you in the shoes of an individual sheltered with all of these entities. SCP isn't just live creatures either, it's also objects and places. And surely you learn that when playing the game. Unfortunately, during gameplay, you never know what to expect when you go through each door. Could it be the correct path on the randomly generated maps? Or could it be him ready to snap your neck when it's out of your direct line of sight? To make matters worse, you're even forced to blink during this game. You never know when you'll encounter that creature. And that equipped with a loud background and doors that lead nowhere, enemy diversity, and a fresh 13-year-old mind? Amazing. The SCP lore was so deep that SCP Containment Breach wasn't the only game created. This wonderful era also produced SCP-087 and 087-B. The game with the famous smile? This game was horrifying and gave me arguably the worst jump scare I've ever experienced. These perfected the environment, combining claustrophobia with low vision and random scares. It also helped me believe that the early 2000s was the best era for jump scares. When walking down this endless staircase, you never know when you're gonna encounter the horribly animated man who smiles. But, god damn was it scary. This game left the player with anticipation. And while it is easy to avoid the encounter with a smile, if you're brand new to the game like me and others were, you surely had to change your pants that day. Outlast. And Outlast was the future. The graphics during its time in 2013 were gorgeous. And the mechanics, well, they were like something people have never seen. And unlike other games with small objectives, Outlast had a full campaign with separate chapters, mechanics, and missions to do. This game was amazing. And looking through everything with a green camera was a nice touch. When exploring through the manor, you get jump scared multiple times, but from avoiding unwinnable conflict due to no fighting mechanics and your only option is being able to run, the environments were disgusting, creepy, and intense. And with the NPCs, especially the famous wheelchair guy, I feel Outlast has mastered the art of butt clenching. But what if I sat instead of running around security cameras? Maybe if I spent 5 nights at Freddy's, I'll find my answer. In 2014, this game took the world by a storm, leaving an even higher impact than the one that Amnesia left. 5 Nights at Freddy's was legendary, and no scary game or even non-scary games were able to produce the same level of force that this game had. It was an immobile game. You didn't do much. You looked left, right, pressed 4 buttons, and observed your security cameras. Why weren't the animatronics at the stage after an hour into the level? That one mechanic is what created the birth of an actual genre, known as the FNAF clones. When observing the cameras, the friendly animatronics would roam around, leaving you to babysit all of them. And while looking at the camera is pretty easy, what added a level of stress in this game was that you were limited to your power too. You couldn't sit in your safe little office space for the whole 6 hours and just look at your cameras. Those drained your batteries. And once you ran out of all the power, well, you were met with so simple yet replayable. This game sparked the peak of horror gaming and built the biggest community I've ever seen. Merch in every store, cringy music videos on YouTube. That game would lead to the decline of horror games. After seeing how much money FNAF made, normal people started to feel like they can do the exact same thing, and they wanted money immediately. There was one game that didn't want money, The Joy of Creation, a rare W for a FNAF clone. It was a great game that while it didn't jump scare me much, it provided a really intense experience that had me at the edge of my seat at times. The gameplay was predictable and repetitive, so unlike the previous games mentioned, no one could enjoy it forever. The graphics were great, the mechanics were great, the environment was great, and I'll give it props, it was a damn good experience, and a last fairly enjoyable experience. Not the scariest, but intense. Almost as intense as Riding with Strangers, which is a game I felt had huge potential and a perfect jump scare. I mean, think about it. Have you ever been jump scared with no sound? Well, this game does that, and it does that well. Problem is, while it had some cool mechanics like rolling up a window and rolling out of a car, that was about all the game seemed to be. Well, you could argue that it was in its early stages if this brings in the money aspect. I believe the creators' quick itch was not scratched enough, and they felt they were doing too much work and not getting enough reward for it. That's just me though. Not only that, but the game got practically canceled, so plenty of fans who invested into the game were left with no product from the company. While it was a great game, eventually you started to see the decline of horror games. Games rarely received updates. They began to slowly get shorter and shorter, more simple than the last, easy to win, and overall, jump scares got corny. They all began to feel incomplete, and YouTubers were running out of consistent content to create. 8 years ago, you could watch a whole playthrough with 20 plus videos of the same game from your favorite YouTubers, or they could make a 40-minute video trying to beat Slenderman. Some games do it right. Poppy's Playtime is a good example. It's a recent release that does everything it was supposed to. It is no Slenderman or SCP Containment Breach, but it's a very well and solid made game that reminds me a bit of Outlast, and it did everything good enough. It importantly had a great mascot. A few other games I've enjoyed lately have been The Backrooms, and another game I've enjoyed that I believe needs more recognition is It Steals, and that game brought back the jump scare for me after years of it lacking. And the reason why was because its use of sound. You only knew you were being chased if your volume was up high, and while the gameplay isn't the best, walking away from the creature in the shadows was a great experience that'll likely scare you a few times. Night at the Supermarket is funny and also pretty good. The gameplay is alright, it's intense but repetitive. Aside from giving those games loves, that's where all the love stops. They aren't bringing the same level of fear that games did when they were in the early 2010s. Games in that time scared everyone that played them. They gave nightmares. They didn't have cute merch that you could buy from Zoomies. They perfected loud sounds, fear, and no predictability, unlike every Five Nights at Freddy's game made after number 2. Those should have never been created. Over time, the jump scares got worse and worse, got more clunky. Characters didn't carry that scare factor anymore either. Luckily, the creator was smart enough to milk the franchise so hard that his political views got him canceled. Security Breach was a disaster. Gameplay was no longer scary. It's very expected. It does not do chasing right, and you're friends with the character that tried to kill you. 95% of the Five Nights at Freddy's clones are garbage and played because no one else has anything to play. Games nowadays just aren't scary like how they used to be. And with people seemingly running out of ideas, the horror game genre has become oversaturated. Horror games were becoming increasingly easy to create with apps like Unity and Unreal Engine. People pump them out so quick because there's still a fair-sized audience willing to shell out $5 for a 15-minute indie game experience. PewDiePie stopped playing horror games a long time ago. Markiplier stuck to his roots and still does. But the fact that he could cram 3 different games into one video shows the market is huge and oversaturated. Games in the modern era lack substance. They're intense, but they aren't scary. They have one key thing, but nothing else. One might have a jump scare, but be a 5-minute game. One might have the greatest graphics in the world, but the jump scare animation is horrible. They just all seem to lack the love that the creators used to put in their games, and it sucks. But maybe we're all getting older. There's still really scary games out there. I just don't think the developers care about anything other than money anymore. Some studios are still really good at producing games and products, like Phasmophobia, but that game introduced us to something that we've never really seen before, and that was using your mic to communicate and summon ghosts. But nowadays, these games just don't hit anymore.